please welcome Dean Mel Sta.
Welcome to the Dean Mel Show. Ako po ang inyong host, Dean Mel Sta. Samahan niyo po kami sa isang oras na sob na kwentuhan. Nakikita po tayo sa Signal Cable Channel 1, 1PH. Pati na rin po sa Facebook at YouTube channel ng 1PH. Simulcast sa Radyo 5 92.3 News FM. Kaya po napapakinggan at nakikita literally sa buong mundo. Pangunang paalala lang po, mag-ingat pa rin po tayo sa peligro ng COVID-19. Tuloy pa rin po ang face mask at saka social distancing. Huwag po tayo magtitipon-tipon kung hindi kinakailangan para maiwasan ang virus na iyan. Pati ako nabubulol na. Kaya ngayon po, ngayong gabi, napaka-special po ng ating programa sapagkat magkakaroon po tayo ng conversation para tayong mga ordinaryong mamamayan ay magkaroon ng ideya sa mga nangyayari sa ating paligid lokal, pati na rin po sa internasyonal. Alam nyo naman po, malapit na ang eleksyon sa May 2022. At sigurado, pagdating ng Hunyo, bago na po. Bago na po ang administrasyon, kaya lang ang tanong, bago ba for the better? Or for the worse? Or business as usual? Ibig sabihin, parang clone lang ng mga nangangasiwa ngayon. Iyan po ang tanong sapagkat po makakaapekto tayo. Pag-usapan rin po natin ang mga pangkalahatang politika. Talaga bang ganyan na tayo? Patronage system na tinatawag. Tingnan po natin kung ano ang mga advokasya o ano ang mga paniniwala at pag-uunawa ng iba't ibang mga tao, lalo na po ang ating guest. At sa international naman, diyan po sa Europa, ating nababalitaan na nilusob ng Russia ang isang sovereign and independent country, ang Ukraine. At talagang ang binobomba po ng Russia ngayon ay hindi lang mga military installation, kundi po mga civilian outpost. Kamakailan nga po, ospital, children and maternity hospital. Naku, nakita ko po sa television, talagang maaawa po kayo sa nangyayari. At ang dami ng lumilikas. Mga refugees sa Poland, 2 milyon na. Kalat sa Moldova, sa Hungary, sa Poland. At lumalabas siyang usapin na NATO o NATO. O, ayan. Kaya, ang pag-uusapan natin, paano ba naapektuhan tayo dyan? Lalong-lalo na po ang Asia. At maaari bang gawin ng China yan? Gayahin? Tingnan po natin, pag-usapan natin. Para lang magkaroon tayo ng idea. Hindi naman po lubusan nating lalaliman, pero para lang tayo magkaroon ng idea. Lalong-lalo na po dyan sa usapin ng West Philippine Sea. International yan. And talking about West Philippine Sea, ang ating panauhin po ay isang taong talagang merong ginawa, napakalaking ginawa, kaya po tayo nanalo dyan sa The Hague. Panauhin natin, si retired Senior Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, Honorable Antonio Carpio. Wow! This is big time. Excited na po ako, lalong-lalo na abogado at law professor po ako. Siyempre, it is a privilege na ating makakapanayam si Associate Justice Antonio Carpio ngayong gabi. Excited po kayo? Excited rin po ako. Kaya po, sandali lang po. Magbabalik po ako, kasama na siya. Dali lang po. ado, I'm sure you're so excited. Let's welcome the Honorable former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Republic of the Philippines, Antonio Carpio. Welcome po sa show namin.
Thank you, Dean Mel, for inviting me to your show. Thank you.
And how are you coping with the pandemic, sir?
Well, doing Zoom like this.
Oh, talaga, you are in demand ngayon. Associate Justice Carpio, very in demand. Pero kaya namin kayo na imbitahan dito is to just talk about what's happening around us and what's happening internationally. So let me start off by asking you, sir, malapit na eleksyon, kinakabahan ba kayo? Kinakabahan ba kayo? Natutuwa ba kayo? Excited ba kayo? O alanganin kayo? What's your feeling for this coming May 2022?
Well, I'm excited and very hopeful because VP Lenny Robredo's numbers are going up rapidly and catching up with the front runner.
Alam mo, Justice, yung during these elections, ang daming nangyari, ano? You have the disqualification issue, and then na TRO, ang COMELEC, on the 2x3 posters, which is actually good. I think that's good. And it's just a different dynamics, and a lot of surveys are coming out. Minsan pa nga parang mga fly-by-night surveys, alam nyo, how does that work? Kasi kaming mga tao, ordinaryong tao, minsan naaapektuhan dyan at minsan hindi. Do we have to really give importance to these surveys, whether pinalabas ng reputable or mga fly-by-night? What's your position there?
Well, of course, we rely only on the reputable surveys. That's one. Second, the surveys are important material only starting March, because historically those who led in November, December, January, even February, those who led in the surveys in these months lost in the election. So the surveys start to be indicative of the results of the election when taken sometime in March, April. So this month, the survey should get to be more indicative of the actual results.
Mm-hmm. Siyempre naman, Justice, the ultimate survey is the result of the election.
That's correct.
And this and today, we a lot of people nagkakaroon ng apprehension because I think this is the only time in Philippine history, I don't know if I'm mistaken, when nakikita natin malapit na ang eleksyon, diyan nagkakaroon ng mga appointments sa COMELEC. And ang lumalabas ngayon, yung mga na-appoint, with all due respect, konektado sa ibang mga kandidato, not in a very simple way, but in a very major way, like representing in election protests, etc. And that also gives a certain, pagkakaba sa mga tao. How do we have to approach this, kami mga mamamayan?
Mel, hindi lang yan. Because these are appointments that require confirmation by the Commission on Appointments to be permanent. So lahat itong appointments ngayon, Congress not being in session, are what we call ad interim appointments. So once appointed by the President ad interim, they assume office right away. Unlike if you are appointed during the session of Congress, you are appointed, you cannot assume office until you are confirmed. So Okay, ad interim na ngayon kasi Congress is no longer in session. But Congress will resume session per their schedule May 22, 2022. May 23 rather, 2022.
Yes.
After the election na sila mag-resume.
Oo nga.
Now, when the Congress resumes, these ad interim appointments expire because they are only ad interim during the period that Congress is not in session. So when Congress resumes on May 23, 2022, they leave office. Their appointments expire and they have to be reappointed again by the president. But during that period, the election ban has taken effect and continues to take effect because the election ban, president cannot appoint 2 months before the election and until the end of his term. His term ends June 30. So all these appointments by the president, the 3 in the COMELEC and the chair of the Commission on Appointments are ad interim appointments, and their appointment expire by May 22 because the following day Congress will resume session, but the president cannot reappoint them. So hanggang doon lang sila. So what is the point in making these appointments when they will never be confirmed? So ano ang mission nila? What is their mission? To
Yes.
be in that office for just 2 months.
Yeah.
Bakit sila ilalagay pa dyan 2 months na lang?
Oo
At
nga.
saka hindi na sila mako-confirm eh.
Oo.
And if there's a new administration, of course, the president will make a new appointment. Nangyari na yan during the time of Chairman the COMELEC chair at that time, si Benipayo. He was appointed ad interim. He presided over the elections, but after the elections, his appointment was not confirmed. So this is exactly what's going to happen now. Of course, Congress can always be called into a special session between
Yes.
now and March 25. Kasi March 25, that's the election ban na. Hindi na maka-appoint si presidente. Remember, if Congress is called into session, the appointments expire. So the president must reappoint.
Yes.
So if Congress is called into session today, the president will reappoint tomorrow so they can be considered for confirmation by the Commission on Appointments. Pero if the Congress will be called into session March 25, wala na. They can be called into special session, but the president cannot reappoint them anymore. So, and it's very tight now, and I don't think the Senate will agree to be called into a special session. And even if it's called into a special session, the senators will not agree to confirm all of these people.
Actually,
I don't think they
Justice, yun na sana ang itatanong ko. Mukhang may mission. Pero, I mean, that was my next question. Pero, Justice, tinitingnan natin ang mga nangyayaring ito. And really, I don't think they can blame people to, get that kind of umiikot na yung isip nila. What does that tell you about the impact on the institution itself, which is the COMELEC, which is supposed to be constitutional, which is supposed to be the vanguard of our electoral process? What does it tell you? Para bang nahihinaan, nababahiran, lumalakas? What does that tell you?
Well, you're a lawyer, Dean, and if you are being appointed as commissioner now of COMELEC and you know that hanggang May 22 ka lang at saka hindi ka na ma-reappoint after that, tatanggapin mo pa ba yan? Pag tatanggapin mo, 2 months, what do you intend to do in 2 months?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we should ask the same question to these new appointees.
Yes.
They will serve for 2 months only.
Pwede ba,
And how will the people judge them?
pero pwede ba, Justice, na may vacancy during election time. Pwede ba naman yon? Pwede ba yon?
Well, yes, there can be a vacancy, but the problem, this is a presidential election, and in the presidential election, there is a presidential ban on appointments kasi paalis na yung presidente. So there is a ban, no, on presidential appointees, and that's 2 months before election day until the end of his term. So starting March 25, 2 months before, kailan ba yung 2 months before May? Hindi na siya maka-appoint.
Oo, yes. Justice, let's go to ano.
Hindi siya maka-appoint actually kasi April, May, March, April, tapos na, no? Kasi March 9 is the 2 months.
Yes. Oo nga. Wala. Ano
So hindi
kaya?
na siya maka-appoint.
Yes. You know that kind of mga galaw, no, mga kilos, mga galaw, no, it doesn't really help, no. People, you know, it more divides the confidence of the people sa mga ganyan. But let me ask you, Justice, no, talking about the presidential candidates, no, and looking ahead, and we are very sure there will be a change come June. Can you just tell us anong hinaharap ng susunod na presidente? Anong pasanin niya? What are the problems he or she will be facing?
Well, the number one problem is he has to raise taxes. There is no way around that because we have borrowed so much during this pandemic kasi, of course, the government revenues were down because business was down, GDP was down. So, babayaran natin yun, napakalaki yun. You know, our debt to GDP ratio is now over 60%, about 61, 62%. And the projection is, by the time President Duterte leaves office, it will be about 64%, 65%. So, the threshold is 60%. When you hit 60% debt to GDP ratio, delikado ka na. I mean, your capacity to repay is now being questioned by the creditors. Yes. And we are there already. So we have to pare down that debt. We have to bring it down. And the only way to bring it down is to collect more taxes. So it's a given.
Yeah.
Tataas ang buwis. So very unpopular our next president. When he assumes office, he will be pressed to impose taxes, new taxes. So, or ibabalik yung ibang taxes, like for senior citizens, baka tatanggalin some of the benefits, no?
Naku.
So that's the biggest problem that I see kasi immediate yan. And of course, because of you have to increase taxes, then there's a pressure on interest rates to go up, inflation will go up, and wages will have to go up also. There will be a demand from workers. So yun ang problema because we're coming out of a recession. Right now, sinasabi nila that the GDP is 5%, but that's 5% of a very low base. We're not even at pre-pandemic levels. Yung 5% na yan, it's not even at pre-pandemic level. So that's because we're starting from a low base. So the biggest problem is the economy. And who is the best person to solve that problem? Somebody who understands economics, of course.
Yes, and isa pa, Justice, somebody who is a good communicator. Kasi basta na narinig yan ng mga tao, taxes, ay naku, sobra naman yan. He or she must be someone who could, may konting swabe. Alam nyo, di ba?
Yeah, and alam mo, napakaswerte si President Duterte kasi ang kanyang role is para umutang lang ngayon. But hindi babayad sa utang kasi the guy who will pay the debt will be the next president. So siya, patulog-tulog na lang siya under the kulambu ngayon because it's not his obligation to pay the debt, not yet.
And nababalita, it's record-breaking ang ating pag-uutang. I think 13 trillion, something like that. sobra na.
Yes.
Di ba? Around
It's
13 trillion
huge
pesos.
because we have reached the 60% threshold. And that is coupled because worldwide, every country will be in the same boat. They will have to repay all their debts because they also borrowed. And so there's a big competition for money. Everybody will be borrowing.
Yes.
Interest rates will go up. It will be very difficult for us.
Aside from recovering economically, what else? What else can you see para maintindihan ng ating mga kababayan na matindi talaga. Dapat talaga tayong pumili. Di ba?
Yeah. So yung the problem of debt repayment, utang, we have to increase taxes. Ang kasabay niyan, prices of goods will go up. Tataas yung mga presyo ng mga basic commodities, no? Tataas yan. Inflation. So people will ask for salary increases. There will be demand. So makita mo na ngayon. And of course, jeepney fares, bus fares will go up. And this is now coupled with a big problem that oil prices are going up because of what's happening in Ukraine.
Yes.
The US is not buying from Russia. The UK is not buying from Russia. And I think EU will follow. And so there will be they will be buying from other sources and they will be competing with us. So tataas yung presyo because they are boycotting a certain country, no? And they will compete with us. So oil prices will go up. Definitely, it's going up already. And we have a problem because ito na, Malampaya will run out of gas at the same time, about 2024, 2025. And Malampaya, our biggest operating gas field in the West Philippine Sea, supplies 40% of the energy requirement of Luzon. 40% of the energy requirement of Luzon. Pag nawala yan, 12 to 14 hours of daily brownout sa Luzon. Daily brownout, rotating. Mas masahol pa ito sa COVID. Kasi at least sa COVID, work from home. Katulad ngayon, we can do business, work from home. But pag wala kang power, wala kang internet, wala kang work from home.
Correct.
Magsasara mga factory, so walang sweldo yung mga workers. Magsasara ang malls, ang opisina. Mas masahol pa sa COVID pag we cannot find a replacement for the Malampaya gas field kasi mauubos na yung gas. And of course, the only replacement locally is Reed Bank. Kaya lang, China is blocking us. Does not want us to get the gas.
Yes.
Kahit na sinabi ng Arbitral Award, the gas in Reed Bank belongs exclusively to the Filipino people. But China said, baliwala yan sa amin. Parang Russia eh. Baliwala yung UN Charter.
Oo.
Kahit na we might is right. Yun that's exactly what Russia is doing. That we can settle a dispute by use of force. Ganyan ang ginagawa ngayon ng China sa West Philippine Sea. But lalo na, if Russia succeeds in Ukraine, China will be emboldened. They will double down on the West Philippine Sea.
Yes.
Yun ang problema. That's why connected itong problema ito because the Russia, by invading Ukraine and breaking the UN Charter, breaking international law, is strengthening the position of China in the West Philippine Sea. Na we can use force to settle the dispute.
Well, that's a good point. Babalik tayo, Justice. Now, we'll just have a gap of about a minute. And then we'll go back, mga kapatid. Pag-usapan nga natin yung West Philippine Sea. Bakit yung mga gulunggong na binibili natin, atin naman. Di ba sabi? Okay, sandali lang po. Nagbabalik po tayo mga kapatid, mga kaibigan dito sa ating programang The Dean Mel Show at ating panauhin si retired Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Let's go back! Alam nyo, Justice, no, itong West Philippine Sea, yan talaga, almost talagang kaming mga Pinoy nagtataka no, dyan sa West Philippine Sea kung bakit malamya ang ating pag-assert dito sa ating mga karapatan dito. Pwede bang briefly kwento nyo sa ating mga kababayan, ano talaga ang nangyari dyan sa West Philippine Sea at anong pinanalunan natin?
Well, sa West Philippine Sea, we have an exclusive economic zone. Under UNCLOS, under international law, meron tayong 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Bawat bansa na may coastal area, may exclusive economic zone up to 200 nautical miles maximum. Wala naman tayong kaharap dyan na mag-overlap, no? Pero yung China, sabi nila, meron kaming historical claim. 2,000 years ago, amin na yan. Alam mo, yung 2,000 years ago, hindi nga nila nakita yung Scarborough Shoal Sabi nila, 2,000 years ago, amin na yan. Alam na namin yan. Wala silang alam about Spratlys. Wala silang literature na sinasabi sa kanilang history na Spratlys belong to them. In fact, recently lang, my research shows it was only in the 1940s that they started to claim the Spratlys. Too late na yon. And besides, they signed the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Under this convention, bawat coastal state merong exclusive economic zone, 200 nautical mile. Pag may opposing country na may exclusive economic zone at kulang yung area, more than it's less than 400 nautical miles, hatiin nila yun in the middle. Yung China, napakalayo. More than 1,000 nautical miles ang Chinese mainland coastline from Palawan, from Luzon. So there is no overlap at all. Sabi nga ng Arbitral Tribunal, napakalayo, walang overlapping economic zone. So dapat meron tayong full exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. And that was the ruling. Kasi wala talagang overlap napakalayo yung China So we won. Meron tayong full. Pero yung mga island territory sa Spratlys at katulad nung Scarborough Shoal, hindi kasama yan sa ruling kasi territorial yon. Pag above water at high tide yung bato, outside the jurisdiction of the tribunal na yan because sovereignty na ang issue. It's ownership of the island. Ang UNCLOS, it's the waters generated from the high tide from the island. So, sabi ng UNCLOS tribunal, sa Scarborough Shoal, that is above water high tide. So, the issue there is sovereignty. Who has sovereignty? We have no jurisdiction. But we have jurisdiction to say whether this Scarborough Shoal generates only a 12 nautical mile territorial sea or meron ding 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Sabi ng tribunal, napakalit yun hindi habitable. Para magkaroon ng exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical mile, dapat habitable. That means a community of people can live there with the resources of the island itself. Hindi kasama yung ini-airdrop yung pagkain, dinadala yung tubig. Based on the resources of the island can support a community of people. Of course, Scarborough Shoal, bato lang yun. Wala na not a single blade of grass in Scarborough Shoal. So, entitled lang to 12 nautical mile territorial sea. So beyond the 12 nautical mile, exclusive economic zone na natin yan. That's the same ruling sa Spratlys side. So we have a full 200 nautical mile from our coastline in Palawan and in Luzon. But in these areas where there are islands na disputed, enclave yan. Walang ruling kung who owns these islands. But hanggang 12 nautical mile lang yung territorial sea ng islands na yun. Walang EEZ yon. So, that is the ruling. Ngayon, Reed Bank is within our exclusive economic zone because totally submerged ang Reed Bank. So, atin talaga yun. Sabi nga ng tribunal, the gas in Reed Bank belongs to the Philippines because it's submerged. It's
Galing.
not even above water at low tide. Low tide submerged pa rin. So, ang problema, sabi ng China, amin yan under the 9-dash line. Yung 9-dash line na yon 2,000 years ago. When they signed China signed the UNCLOS, China agreed that all maritime claims will be based on UNCLOS. All historic rights are abolished, are extinguished. Kasi if you don't extinguish historic claims, walang katapusan ng dispute, walang katapusan ng giyera. Kasi sasabihin ng China, 2,000 years ago, nakita na namin yan, amin yan. Sabihin ng Rome, ng Italy, well, we are the successor of the Roman Empire, andoon kami 2,000 years ago, amin yan. So walang katapusan. So nagkaroon sila ng agreement. Wala ng historic rights. You can claim only based on the status of your island. If your island is not habitable, nobody can live there. So 12 nautical mile lang. Pag habitable yan, may 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone ka. So yun ang naging base.
Yun. Ang linaw. Sobra naman ang linaw nun. ngayon, Justice, itong claim natin na ito, ayan ang China, medyo talagang, yung sinabi nyo kanina, because of this Ukraine and Russia situation, baka ma-embolden ang China ngayon. Paano? Anong gagawin natin? What should we do? And how do we approach this?
That's why tama yung ginawa ni Secretary Locsin. The Philippines joined 141 countries to condemn strongly Russia for its unprovoked invasion. That it violates the UN Charter. Kasi under the UN Charter, under Article 2, all disputes between states on territory, maritime zone, or any kind of dispute must be settled peacefully through negotiation, mediation, or arbitration. The use of force or the threat of force to settle a dispute is prohibited. It is outlawed. You cannot gain anything. You cannot acquire title to property in violation of this rule. Like Russia now. It is invading Ukraine through the use of force. It will not give them ownership of Ukraine. That is because that is illegal under international law. So, ang problema natin the same. China is trying to grab our EEZ through use of force.
Yes.
And that's why I said we have to oppose Russia so that China cannot use that as a precedent. Because pag ginawa ng Russia, susunod ng China, sasabihin nila nagbago na by state practice. Yung UN Charter, nagbago na yan kasi ito na ngayon. This is the latest practice accepted by the world. That's why the world must reject it.
Yes, the world. Alam niyo po, Justice, yung kamukha ngayon, ang dami ng gustong sumali sa NATO dahil nga niyang lakas loob ng Russia para mag-atake. Ngayon, kung ihahambing natin, compare sa Philippines, meron tayong mutual defense treaty. Buti pala na held in abeyance yung pagtitigil noon. Ibig sabihin, walang foresight. Ang lumalabas ngayon, walang foresight nung araw, nung nabigla na putulin na. Ano masasabi nyo doon?
Tama ka dyan, Dean Mel. Kasi, alam mo, yung nag-collapse yung USSR, na-dissolve, nagkaroon ng opportunity yung mga former republics ng USSR, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, kasi they were annexed by Russia in 1940 because Russia is a big country. wala silang magagawa, na-annex sila, incorporate sila as one of the republics. Yung na-dissolve, pagkataon na nila sumama sa NATO. Kasi sa NATO, the attack on one country is an attack on all countries. Article 5. So may mutual self-defense sila. So nakapasok sila. Ukraine wanted to join. Kaya lang, merong ibang politician sa Ukraine sabi, wag na tayo sumama, dito tayo sa Russia. Divided sila. They were not able to join right away. At that time, Russia was weak right after the dissolution of the USSR. So, nakasama lahat yung mga former republics of the USSR, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, and the other Warsaw Pact countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia. Nakasama sila sa NATO. They are now enjoying the protection of the Mutual Defense Treaty. An attack on one is an attack on all.
Yes.
Ukraine wants to join now. Kaya lang nakita ni Putin, and Russia now has been revived economically and militarily by Putin. And Putin now knows if Ukraine joins NATO, forever hindi niya na makuha ang Ukraine will be outside the influence of Russia. So pinipilit niya ngayon kukunin to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. Katulad ng Finland, during World War II, Russia attacked Finland, and Finland, the war stopped because Finland said, we will be neutral. Hindi kami sasama sa West, we will be neutral. So that's how they called Finlandization. Maging neutral ka na lang, you don't join any military bloc. So ngayon, sabi ni Zelensky the other day, they will not insist on joining NATO anymore. So magiging Finland sila. And we do not know yet whether Putin will accept this and withdraw and say, okay, you will be like Finland, you will not join NATO, you are a neutral country, okay ka sa amin. But we don't even know in what is in the mind of Putin. Baka gusto ni Putin kukunin ulit and make it a part of Russia.
Ayun.
Because Ukraine became part of the Russian Empire before World War I, no? It was part of the Russian Empire. So the Ukrainians have always wanted to be independent. So nagkataon after the dissolution. Pero divided sila. If they were not divided, if they immediately joined NATO, wala na.
Wala na to, no?
Hindi na sila makuha ng Russia. Ngayon, yun ang problema nila because si Putin is actually an imperialist.
Yes.
Russia became imperialist again under Putin.
Parang nga nagsasabi si Putin, he's not anymore an ideologue. Hindi na siya komunista. He's just brute force na emperor na siya.
Kasi sa Russia, they have also elections, although it's different kind of election kasi kontrolado niya. But it's not an ideological war now. It's not an ideological competition between Europe and Russia, between the West and the East. It's now the old classic. Parang mga empires sila na naglalaban. Wala namang ideology. It's just, we are stronger and you are weaker, you are under us. Ganyan lang.
Paano nyo namang mahambing yan compared that to our mutual defense treaty with the United States?
Kaya nga, we should value our mutual defense treaty because ang problema natin, we have a neighbor that is nuclear armed, that has a powerful military and wants our territory and maritime zone. We have to have a NATO na susuporta sa atin, and that is the US. And we have to have a balance of power in the West Philippine Sea. The only country that can provide a balance of power in the West Philippine Sea, in the South China Sea, is the US.
Yes.
We must value that mutual defense treaty, the treaty that the Ukrainians want. They want protection of a nuclear state because that's the only one. The only antidote against a neighbor that has nuclear arms and you don't have nuclear arms is to get an ally that has nuclear arms. That's the only antidote.
Yes, Justice, correct. Parang common sense, no? Parang,
Yeah, it's common sense. The only country that can help us, willing to help us, is the U.S., and we happen to have a treaty already. You know, the Ukrainians are so desperate
to have a
be
treaty.
part of NATO,
Yeah.
but they were too late. I mean, they missed the boat. I mean, they took their time, so now they have to suffer.
Parang ano,
And
Justice, parang really we have to analyze the Historiano, yung concept ng Cold War noon, yung Cold War noon is para talagang pasay na, no? Wala nang ideology ngayon. It's just Pac-Man ngayon. We want to get. So therefore,
Yeah.
it's with all due respect to the Duterte administration, parang ang mentality nila noon is Cold War pa tayo, China tayo. Wag na natin sa Amerika. Parang we live in a globalization world where we have to have allies. Iba na ang paradigm ngayon. Parang they also miss the boat. Parang yung conceptualization na yun, di ba?
Yeah.
I just got that insight because of you. Di ba?
Yeah, it doesn't need a rocket scientist to understand that the only country that can help us defend the West Philippine Sea is the U.S. There's no other country willing to do it and has the means to do it.
Yes. And I heard Justice, yung 7th Fleet ng US nakapark sa Singapore every now and then. Tama ba yun? And they are smart. Yeah, they are smart, ang Singapore.
Yeah, and if you look at Singapore, a very small state, and faces Malaysia, a big state, and Indonesia, and it came out in favor of sanctions against Russia because they understand the value of international law, that no country should invade another country to settle a dispute. The dispute must be settled by negotiation, mediation, or arbitration. That's why Singapore sided with the US, with the West, and even imposed sanctions on Russian banks, imposed the export ban. So because for them, international law is what protects them.
Yes.
Napakaliit ang Singapore.
Oh,
For small countries like Singapore, it is the UN Charter that guarantees their existence. For a country like us, we are not
good.
small, but we
Yes.
don't have nuclear weapons.
yes.
It is still the UN Charter that guarantees our existence, and what fortifies this is our alliance with the nuclear armed state.
I like that. I like that, Justice. No, the law international. We must make use of international law to protect us. No, to protect us. That's very a nice statement. No?
In fact, if you look at the countries that understand this, Singapore hosts U.S. forces through servicing of their Navy ships. Very close relationship. Japan wants U.S. troops to be stationed because these U.S. troops are tripwires. If China attacks Japan, if there are U.S. Troops there that are hurt, of course the U.S. will retaliate because their troops have been attacked. The same with Korea. Their guarantee that the U.S. will be there to help them against North Korea are the U.S. troops. They are tripwire.
Yes. Oh.
So that's why Poland wants U.S. troops in their country. That is their guarantee that the U.S. will be there to protect them. Also, the small states, the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, they want U.S. troops, NATO troops to be stationed in their country
Wow.
because that is their guarantee that they will have allies if they are attacked. And that is why Ukraine wants also, but too late, no? But we must understand that this is the situation now.
Yes.
That
yes.
You have to get an assurance that your ally will be on your side when the time comes.
Yes. Parang Justice, I am not less patriotic if I want bases here. I am just smart.
Yes.
Di ba?
I mean, you cannot call the South Koreans not patriotic. They're the most patriotic people I know. The
Yeah.
Japanese are the most patriotic people I know. The
Yes.
Poles are the most patriotic people I know. The Poles have been invaded by Russia, by Germany, by France. So they know the value of an ally. And they know the U.S. is too far. The U.S. has no interest in taking their land.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Wow.
we must understand the value of alliances. This is very important. The lesson of Ukraine is the value of a military alliance to guarantee your territorial integrity and sovereignty. You know, Dean Mel, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine was in possession of a third of the nuclear bombs of the USSR. Ukraine was a nuclear power. Nuclear arms. They had nuclear bombs. But Russia, UK, and the US convinced Ukraine, you give up your nuclear arms and we will guarantee your territorial integrity and sovereignty. We guarantee that no country will attack you. And of course, Ukraine said it's very expensive to maintain all these weapons, so they gave it up. Sinaole, they gave it up to Russia, and the US, they diffused it. They demobilized those bombs. But Russia was the first country to attack Ukraine. Less than 20 years later, Russia attacked and annexed Crimea. Now, Russia again attacks the rest of the territory of Ukraine. The lesson here is you cannot rely fully on the guarantees. You must have credible self-defense. That's why, for us, we cannot just rely on U.S. Guarantee on the military. We have to carry the burden because, of course, the U.S. will say, we are military allies, but you're not spending on your own self-defense.
Yes.
You are just a free rider, a freeloader.
Yes.
So we have to carry the burden, prepare ourselves. We must have enough forces for a credible self-defense. So we have a value to the military alliance.
Wow.
That is the U.S. wouldn't want the freeloaders also. We wouldn't want also to have a military alliance with a country that doesn't take their defense seriously.
Yes.
So our military defense must be taken seriously. We must spend for it because that's the only way to survive in this world, in this imperfect world. Just look at Ukraine, a large country, larger than France, the second largest country in Europe, very large, very modern. They have industries, they make tanks, they make planes, but of course they cannot fight a nuclear armed country.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. Ang dahil nating natutunan ngayon. Sobra. So good. Justice, dito sa, I'd just like to deviate a little bit. Dito sa Signal, naniniwala kami na laging may paraan, no? O sa papaanong paraan natin, this coming election again, parati akong naiisip tong election na to. How can we, sa paanong pamararaan natin sisiyatin ang mga kandidato? How can we look at the candidates? How can we investigate them? How can we look at them para magkaroon tayo ng intelligent voting? Para sa mga kabataan natin na nanonood ngayon.
Alam mo, Dean Mel, I'm chair of the Isang Bayan, no? So, sa amin, we have developed the criteria for choosing our candidates. And VP Lenny, Kiko, Pangilinan, the Senate candidates pass through this criteria. Ano yung first? Integrity. Number one criterion, integrity. The candidate must have integrity. Honesty, yan. Integrity. Second, he must have competence. I mean, dapat marunong because you cannot put somebody there who doesn't know. Competence, no?
Yes.
So, integrity, competence, kasama na dyan, of course, experience sa competence. Third is patriotism, love of country. Because you may have a president who have competence, experience, but who is afraid to defend the country in the West Philippine Sea.
Oh, yes.
So, he must be patriotic.
Yes.
Because that the president is the commander-in-chief. And he directs the military to defend. The Constitution says the task of the armed forces is to defend the territory and the sovereignty of the country.
Yeah.
So he is the commander-in-chief. Dapat siya mangunguna dyan. And the fourth is vision. What is his vision for the country? 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, where does he see the country? Dapat meron tayong markers eh. Kasi, you go to the other countries, they have this 5, 10, 15-year plan. Sinusunod talaga nila. When I go to Vietnam, I read their papers. Front page nila, ganito lang mga news nila. How this province will get 5% growth rate this year. They're talking about growth rates in their front pages. Walang iba.
Roadmap.
So, every day, yun lang sa isip nila. So, of course, they are trained for that, and that's their direction. We have to, that is what I call a vision. So, we must have a candidate, a president who has a vision. Where is he bringing this country 5, 10 years from now? Dapat ganyan. The political parties must have their own program that way.
Justice,
So, yun.
Justice, may naalala lang ako, no? When I see these Ukrainian people saying, I will die for my country. Come here, we will fight against you. And then I also recall yung mga future statement ng ilang mga official natin nung araw. Baka bombahin lang tayo. Baka mamasaker tayong lahat. Wag na lang. Parang it's nakakainggit. I mean, it's naiinggit ako. Dapat ganun rin dapat ang salbo, no?
Yeah, of course. President Duterte said, inutil ako pagdating sa West Philippine Sea. When it comes to defending the West Philippine Sea, I am inutil. The commander-in-chief is saying, there's nothing I can do, inutil ako. Ano klaseng commander-in-chief yan? Pag sinabi yan ni Zelensky, sisipain na siya ng mga tao niya.
Exactly. That's another lesson. That's wow. On a personal note, Justice, no, you're such a remarkable person, no, from so many lessons we got tonight, and it's really very fantastic. On a personal note, kayo, Justice, how about you? Your personal principles in life para masabi natin sa ating mga kababayan na what is Carpio's 2 or 3 principles in life na pwede naming gayahin?
Well, very simple, tell the truth. Always tell the truth. And second, always do what is right. Yun lang.
Simple, very simple nga. Justice, thank you very much for accommodating us tonight. It was an honor, a privilege, and most of all, it was a joy. It was a joy to hear enlightened thoughts tonight. Maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you also, Dean Mel, for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justice. Sa uulit, Justice, may part 2.
Of course. Anytime.
Thank you very much. Mga kaibigan, ayan po, di ba? Na natuto tayong lahat. Alam nyo, yung West Philippine Sea yan, para nung nagsasalita si Justice, para kung nanonood sa comics, ang simple, ang dali pa lang intindihin. Basta't malinaw yung pag-uusap ng mga tao. At yung mga lesson natin na natutunan ngayon tungkol sa patriotism, tungkol sa pagpipili ng ating mga kandidato, no? tungkol sa magiging problema sa ating bayan, yung pasanin ng mga presidente. Kaya napaka-importante po na pumili tayo ng wasto at mahusay na presidente, na walang criminal record, talagang truthful, magaling. Mga kababayan, bigyan nating pag-asa. Sabi nga ni Justice Carpio, very hopeful pa rin siya. Bigyan natin pag-asa ang ating bansa naman. Tandaan nyo, ulit, sa susunod na linggo, dito po sa The Dean Mel Show, kami ang boses ng pinagkakaisang Pilipinas. Mabuhay po kayong lahat.